this webinar organized by the Center for Online Education and Learning, that is COEL, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, Hyderabad, India. I'm happy to share that our university is the first open university in India established in 1982 with a motto of democratizing higher education. So along with me now, we have our COEL team members from Ambedkar Open University, as well as our deans, other faculty members, and also directors, Professor Solomon and Professor Pallavi, and also our COEL consultant, Sushimna Rao, is also with us to welcoming you all for this webinar. So yeah, actually this today's webinar is designed as an interactive exploration. So we are privileged to have with us Professor Dominic, Professor Arc University, for supporting digital transformation in K-12 and higher education with a focus on open education, open pedagogy, accessibility, collaborative, professional development, and AI, who will guide us through this core factor framework and also demonstrate how this systematic information management works in practice. Thank you, Professor Dominic, for your acceptance as well as to joining with us today. I now request our COEL consultant Sushimna Rauji to introduce our Professor Dominic and also lead this webinar. I welcome you once again for this webinar on systematic information management by Professor Dominic.
Thank you, Pushpa ma'am, to open this wonderful OE week with a great introduction towards the session. So as you said, in today's world, information knowledge is constantly being created, shared, and reshaped. That's what we just spoke when it is starting, right? Sometimes it is very difficult to process the information without an approach, a structured approach, right? So from various digital stewardship life cycle models, we understand that information must be intentionally created, organized, maintained, and preserved to remain useful over time. So today's session is, as Pushpa Chakravarti ma'am said, designed as an interactive exploration, where Professor Dominic will be showcasing, demonstrating a framework and a systematic information management works in practice in their university. Coming to Professor Dominic, we are privileged to have you with us. She's a professor at York University, and the collaboration, how it all started. I must say that Professor Dominic is a prominent person in the world of open education. Maybe, please correct me, Professor Dominic, when it all started, the pedagogy and open educational resources or open education movement. Since then, she's been involved in the open education system. So I welcome you, ma'am. Please, let's begin with a great insights from you, why systemic information management matters in today's open education ecosystems. Over to you, Professor Dominic.
Thank you, Sushumna, and thank you, Professor Pushpa, for introducing me and inviting me to share a journey that, yes, started, I would say, just before 2000 at the University of Toronto, when we started exploring open science, open access journals. And at that time, we were more looking at scientific articles than open pedagogy and open education. But that was the beginning of a journey where we started really talking about copyrights issue and authorship, and the importance of knowledge sharing and providing free access. I think that all of that movement that started at the University of Toronto in 1997, 1998 at the Knowledge Media Design Institute has seen other parts in the world join the movement. Then it was like Europe, it was the US with OER Commons, Merlot, LibreText. The idea was that knowledge needed to be accessible by a big number, and knowledge textbook at that time needed to be accessible and free. And actually, Pressbook was launched in Canada, in Montreal, Now, of course, it's an international endeavor, but it started as well in Canada. So I would say that, yes, I have been involved in that movement, but I wouldn't say that, as always, it's not always the pioneer who are like the always most advanced. I would say that Europe is right now leading the field. And that's where I met Shushumna in 2021 for the Open Education Global in Nantes, just during the pandemic. And since then, we have been collaborating. So I have been involved in developing projects between Canada and India since 2021. So it has been a long journey. It's 5 years. And I think that we both learn, and that's why we are very happy to present today the result of 5 years collaboration, going from reflecting on repositories, reflecting on the notion of open educational resources, open knowledge, and then, of course, the notion of the tools and the ecosystems that we need to constantly rethink so that it goes along the journey and the development, because open education has evolved a lot from the beginning and will continue to evolve. And that's going to be the talk of today, is really how do we keep updated with all of these changes. So I'm going to share a slide. I don't know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
You can.
Yes, we
Okay.
can.
So already, yes.
Sorry, Dominique, your notes is also seen. So maybe, yeah, and
Still seen?
yeah, you can more move towards maybe one. You can share advanced and then only your slide, maybe.
Okay, just a second.
Yeah, sure.
Share.
So yes, we can view.
Okay.
Perfect.
So when we met Shushumna and I in Nantes, the conversation were really around repositories and open educational resources. And at that time, we were involved in Canada as well, particularly at the post-secondary level, was where can we have a national infrastructure or at least connected repositories where courses, open educational courses, could be retrieved, discovered, accessed, assessed, and evolved. And I realized by getting involved myself in developing a repository for K-12 resources for educators in French, because we had a major challenge, which was a shortage of educators teaching French in immersion. Canada being a bilingual country, students learn French very young. They start in kindergarten and up to grade 12 and then continues to the university. So we had a challenge. There was not enough professors, and we were told that it was a question of resources. Now, we know that it's not only a question of resources, it's actually a question of professional development at the pre-university level and at the post-secondary level. But it took us 5 years to identify really where was the problem, because during the pandemic, everybody was saying, we need resources, we need resources, we need to share resources. How do we develop resources? So there was a massive involvement in educating professor at the post-secondary level and at the pre-university level in developing educational resources, which are OER, and that can be shareable, modified, remixed under Creative Commons license. So for 4 years, all our energy was to train educators to develop open books, OER, so that everybody could teach online. There was a lot of online teaching. And to to keep updated with new information and new knowledge, we needed to have people collaborate and share. So after 4 years, what have I learned? I have learned that, yes, now there is lots of repositories which are interconnected. So for example, in Canada, we have a major repository in Quebec in French for all of the universities, where all of the courses, OER for knowledge, policies could be accessed. Then we have one west in Vancouver, which is called BC Campus. And then we have one, and I will show you later, we have one in Center Canada, where it's called eCampus. And out east, they interconnect with Quebec and with the other repository across the country. So what we realized was that what was very important was to develop collaboration and memorandum of understanding between different ecosystems to make sure that our resources, when deposited in one particular repository, would be accessible in the other repository. So it was really like the collaboration between databases and repositories that share the same taxonomies, the same metadata, so that OER courses, open books, press books could all be accessible, discovered, and reused. So what happened when all of these repositories starts being interconnected? It's no longer a problem of finding resources. It's really a question of information abundance, knowledge fragmentation. Knowledge is like in one repository and then in another. In university, when it's pre-university, it's in LMS for these school boards, or they are using Google Suite, they're using D2L. So information and OER is everywhere. And then it really becomes difficult for what is important today, which is exchange, together, collaboratively, communities of practice, looking at resources, assessing them, and augmenting them. But because particularly with AI, we know that AI is going to be able to generate OER, but OER without context and assessment. And if you know the Bloom taxonomy, OER AI will be able to do the low cognitive skills. But what is critical thinking and creativity, which is at the top of the Bloom taxonomy, that's where you need communities of practice. Creating OER, AI can create a lesson plan, AI can create resources, and particularly OER, it's coming. There are lots of discussion this week through Open Education Week, where you're going to see AI creating resources. But we know that resources without context, without assessment, then the students do not really understand why you are using this resource and not this one. This is the higher cognitive skills in the Bloom taxonomy, the critical thinking, why this resource and not this one? And how can I improve that resource so that it makes sense to my students who are in front of me, who have diverging needs? And sometimes an OER is developed in Canada, you want to reuse it in your university in India, you need to relocalize it. And these are the higher cognitive skills in the Bloom taxonomy. So we will talk about AI later, but my point is what we have noticed is digital transformation is accelerating, expanding volumes of OER and research. There's lots of research. There's lots of research brief, lots of research articles now available online because of open access. In Canada, the funding agency are requesting that scholars publish their databases when they do research and their article free in open access journal. So the open world is very, very busy at the moment, but it's fragmented, it's everywhere. And what we thought would be a time saving is becoming actually no longer a time saving, because you spend a lot of time looking for resources and trying to make sense and relocalize them. So there are lots of educators who say, where is my textbook? That was simple. I would be just using a textbook and I didn't need to do all this search. The problem with the textbook is that it took longer to update and it would not be able to follow the rapid change that the educational world is facing at the moment. So we cannot go back to the textbook. We need to go back maybe in digital press books or open books, but it does require a lot of time at the individual level. That's where collaboration is key. You know, you can achieve a lot by yourself, but you can achieve much more when you collaborate, because you actually rely on other people to do certain tasks and you just focus on what is really relevant and useful to you. So knowledge fragmentation is what we have noticed right now. Now I'm going to stop sharing this, and then we're going to go to another slide. So what did we notice in our project? Is that we needed to go from storage. Storage could be in your Google Drive, could be in repositories, which was just a place where you share with with learners knowledge or information. So how do we go from storage to a system design, which is key to optimize collaboration and save time? Don't forget that saving time is very important. So we need a structure organization, and that structured in organization need to actually include what we call intentional curation, and then version control and preservation. I'm sure you have been in repository and you click and the link says 404 error, because it means that the OER was not updated. And then this is what we mean by version control and preservation. Like, it is part of our duty to, when we update our course or an open book, or when we update a OER, to constantly indicate its version 01, version 02, version 03, so that people who are using our resources can see as well the evolution in your mind, like you are adding content. So the curation aspect is very important. And once you have a place where you can see the different version of an OER or an open book or a press book, then you will be able at some point, and we will see that today, to transform that information or fragmented knowledge into what you actually do every day, which is toolkits, learning pathways, micro-credential, and practice brief. So how do we go from information to create knowledge? How do we go from information, and OER is information, and we transform it into a knowledge that will be in the context of open education, reusable. So learning assets which are reusable. So how do we do that? I think everybody is aware of the 5R OER framework. So retain in a systematic information practice. To retain a resource, a micro-credential, an open book, a press book, I need to preserve the version and ensure long-term access. That's part of your kind of duty. Then you have reused. You have to structure the repository so that it really corresponds to your community of practice. I will demonstrate that later, but you need to curate and choose. You cannot just give access to your learners to all of the repositories because they're going to spend too much time looking for resources. You need to curate that for them like you used to do it traditionally when you were building your courses. When you were building your courses, you were bringing different kind of knowledge and there was a progression, there was assessment. So you're going to do the same thing with OER, an open educational micro-credential or open books. What is important in a community of practice is to start really thinking about the revise and the remix. There are lots of open educational resources which are available, and sometimes they are amazing resources, but they are not being revised or remixed. So they just stand alone in a repository and not really discovered and not really transformed. This is the transformation which is very important, is the transformation of knowledge so that it actually meets your students' needs and your need. So we are going to now move to the next one. Before I do the demonstration of the ecosystem that we decided to build to answer the needs. Am I sharing the right?
Not really. We cannot see anything.
Okay, so let me share. I think it's this one. Thank you. You can see it now?
Yes, building sustainable knowledge workflows. Yes.
Yes. So what do we need? As you can see, the ecosystem is like what we call the virtuous cycle. You start by having information, you organize it, you preserve it. That's part of open education. And that part is, I would say, the part relating to information. And courses or just a resource is information that is being documented and preserved and accessed through open repository. What needs to be added so that it really becomes knowledge is the sharing aspect and is the learning and improving aspects on those OER. And this talk today illustrates, as you can see, there is cumulative knowledge in India. I learn a lot from actually your practices in India through Sushumna, and we develop different open content for research practices, for courses, for example, on research and methods. And it was the cumulative knowledge of professors in India and the courses that I teach at York, at the graduate level on research and methods. So that cumulative knowledge, which was shared here, has allowed us to actually come up with open books that are bringing the assessment of different perspective on what research and method can be in a business course, in a linguistic course, in a business science course. So it's the global collaboration that allows us to really confront our ideas about teaching and building knowledge. And why it is interesting that the word sustainable is important here, because it's really that circle that allows us to sustain it locally and globally. Globally, when we start working, our repositories are going to be updated with taxonomies and metadata that actually reflect the needs of different learning systems. In India, for example, the educational in India or in Canada or in Europe. I work a lot with Europe and Francophonie because my learners are more located in the Francophone worlds. So we are connecting our repositories, but we are connecting as well our understanding about what is accessible, what is I would say sustainable. Sometimes we don't understand the word sustainable the same way. We don't understand the word inclusive the same way, because in different geographies in the Francophone world, sustainability and inclusive in Africa, for example, and I'll show you later that in the ecosystem that we have created, there is a direct link with an OER repository developed in Africa. It's important because we realize that sustainability and inclusion does not mean the same thing locally. And this is what it makes your final product far more universal, because you are including those different perspectives in attached to these words. So the best practices today is to share tagging. As I said, I share tagging with India now, with all of the projects I am developing in India. I share tagging with the Francophone world because it's a different way of tagging knowledge, because we don't see the world the same way. We know that we see the world through the language, and then therefore we don't tag the same way or classify information the same way. But if we want to go for universal, so that your resources are accessible and then assessed and transformed, then you need to align your tagging and your classification standards. So that's what the most repositories are doing now. So for example, because we have finished thinking about the classification standards, when I deposit a professional development OER in eCampus Ontario, which is the repository the closest to my university, and that is giving me access for free to, for example, H5P, Pressbook, so giving me access to all those tools. What is interesting is that when I deposit an OER in my local repository in Canada, and then I go into a repository in Europe called ORCI, or if I go to OER Commons, I can see my resource. And I can see that it has been tagged the same way, because we want to align the taxonomies. Institutional repositories align with open licenses, because we're talking about it's Open Education Week. We're talking about open education, open pedagogy, open science. It's clear that there is open licenses. So it's all about the 5R, and there are different ways of sharing. You can protect, you can share, you can allow for sharing your resource, but you may say, I don't want you to modify this resource, or I don't want you to remix this resource. And sometimes it makes sense to not allow for a OER to be remixed. But most of the time, we allow resources to be shared, reused, remixed in different contexts. And then we're going to arrive at this part, the collaborative documentation, the cross-border repository, and this is the part where I want to focus today, which is really the horizon scanning and how do we identify information, we curate information or knowledge, and we innovate. Because this is, as remember, you said, the Bloom taxonomy. What is very important to keep as educators in the 21st century is the higher cognitive skills, the critical thinking and the creativity. The rest, a lot of it is going to be created by AI, like these slides. The slides I'm sharing today were created by AI, because this is something that I don't need to spend much time. Where it's more important to share time is to build those communities of practice. And this is what we are going to demonstrate today. Is there anything else I need to present, Shushumna, before going to the demonstration?
I think this is good. Maybe you can demonstrate because it's already 35 minutes now. Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm going to show you our journey and why we decided to move beyond repository and beyond open educational resources. And I'm going to demonstrate an ecosystem that allow educators to not only be trained, but as well to collaborate to develop knowledge. So this is, as I mentioned, it's an ecosystem, as you can see here, which is for the teaching of French from kindergarten to post-secondary education, lifelong learning, and professional development. So it's a long span, but because we need to have the community together so that they can work together in looking at OER, transforming OER, we created an ecosystem where the community can meet, discuss, develop critical skills, and we give them tools as well. So you can see, we want to share so that they can inform themselves and equip themselves. What is important as well is at the moment of AI, the educational profession is at risk, like the legal profession, like health, like any profession at the moment is at risk in keeping out of mind really their identity. What is it to be an educator, and what is it to still be ahead so that I can share my knowledge at the post-secondary level with learners or at the pre-university level. So what was important was the networking, but really, how do we develop a professional identity at the age of AI, at the age of open education? So what we created, it looks like, I would say, if I look at the news feed, you all know social media like LinkedIn or other social media. So originally, the first platform is really organized so that people can share information, best practices in the field where they are developing skills to be educators. So here it's French educators. So we have a news feed. And as you can see, a news feed, like in LinkedIn, you can publish what is important. So when we are looking at the information system management, we want that information to flow in one ecosystem so that everybody can be informed about what's happening. So the news feed, people are posting what is important to know right now for your field as an educator in French in Canada for training students to be bilingual. What do you see here? You see that, for example, you could have on education, you can have on techno-pedagogy, you can just have about news. So in techno-pedagogy, now it's about open education, but you can have other subjects. You can have, for example, on the neuro-linguistic approach, you want news on this, you can actually click and then you'll have the community of practice sharing what they have discovered. So it's not a repository, as I was discussing before. Now it's really a news feed, everything that you need to be informed, to be up to date, to upskill yourself in your field of expertise. The community of practice shares what they have found on social media, what they have found in, for example, blogs that are on their LinkedIn. They share it here. So you are always being updated on the latest information, but it's kept and curated within a space which is dedicated to your profession. So that's the newsfeed. Now we have another way of sharing information. It's the educational monitoring. Here, what is it? Most educators don't have the time to read articles that are specific to their fields. So for the teaching of French, what we have done is that we are bringing open source articles or association. So this is a Quebec association for the teaching of French, and they publish reports, education brief, they publish blogs, they publish articles, lots of information. Here is another one. Here is another one. So these are different. And then we're going to grow those kind of categories. And what we do is that we propose our educational community of practice a kind of a synopsis and synthesis of these 20 pages articles. So we have AI synthesizing for the learner in the platform an article that they may be interested in reading, and AI give them as let's say that this is an article published by a renowned association. So AI does a synthesis of the article systematically. I don't need to get involved. AI does the synthesis, and we know AI is really good for that. I don't need to spend time for that. And then we give the link to the original articles so that if you are interested, then you can actually go and read when you have time. So you can bookmark. I bookmarked. I am interested in reading this later. I can bookmarked, and then it becomes, as you can see here, your profile, your inbox, and we'll talk about the inbox, my training, and my bookmarks. So in my bookmarks is everything that is coming into the ecosystem that I am interested in reading later to integrate in my own teaching. So it's in my space, in the same ecosystem. I don't need to leave, everything is there. I can have groups now because we said what's important is actually to work together. So as you can see, there are 12 groups here. These are open content creations, and these groups can be private or public. And public means that everybody can join them. But when they are private, it means that you want to work on that particular evaluate, assess information or content, and together exert your critical thinking skills, assessment of an OER, and then you say, maybe we want to actually create or co-create a micro-credential together So you create a course. So this is, for example, a course. That group wants to create a course on the neuro-linguistic approach associated with language teaching. So they all are here and they are discussing all of these documents that they can actually find outside, that they share, and then they can discuss. So what is a group like? When you are in my groups, I'll go into my groups. So I belong to here, and let's say that we are looking at this one. That was a conference. So what can I do with the people that I am sharing the group? I can post photos, albums, documents, and invite people. So that group becomes, again, inside ecosystem where you curate information and resources for later use to transform that information into knowledge. And it's everywhere is in the same ecosystem. You don't need to leave and go somewhere else. You just collaborate in this platform. And this is very important, the collaboration, the assessment, so you can share OER. You can say, let's create a course on neurolinguistic. You go and bring different OER, you discuss it, and then I'm going to show you with Shushumna what happens next. We're giving as well another tool for people to co-create a sandbox, like a Moodle LLM, where they can actually co-create a micro-credential or a course. But what is important here is that you can publish events. So we want people to upskill. I want to actually know more about this. These are events which are associated with your profession. This is the educational monitoring. These are scientific articles that are specific to your profession. These are the members that I can actually share. And this is like the news that is coming every day, which is curated and for which you can actually discuss together. So these are all, and you can share, you can invite people, but it's important. So as you can see, this is OE Weeks. There's lots of OE Week event this week, because not only there is event from Camarines, but there is as well event from the Francophone in Quebec, who are not doing 1 week, they're doing a month. So they have like 20 open education sessions. So we put them all here so that people who are interested in open education and Francophonie have all of the events in the same ecosystem, which is this platform. So as you can see, it went back to French, but I can move back to English. And this is important because all of the tools can be in any language. So this platform, you can have it in Hindi, in English, in Spanish, in French. All of those tools are multi-plurilingual. So just before I leave, as you can see, here are the link to the repository. So the eCampus Ontario repository is the open library. So for example, if I say, okay, let's look at the resources that Dominique and Shushumna created, I'll click there and we'll see, are you seeing the open education, are you seeing the eCampus, Shushumna?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay. So as you can see, the difference between the platform that I just showed you, which looks like the LinkedIn, and this is a repository. So here you have courses, but there they are in a database, which means you can access them, retrieve them, transform them because they are OER. As you can see, they are OER. It says OER here, but you cannot see them in your ecosystem. You need to upload them into your LMS or your environment where you can view them. Here is another one. This is creating accessible interactive OER with H5P. So as you can see, this is a database. This is a repository, which is different from the ecosystem where you have information coming to the ecosystem and being discussed, shared, and then transformed. So this is what we really need to transform. So Shushumna, quickly, do you want to share your screen?
Yes, I think I am sharing quickly. I'll just say a few words. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Professor Dominique. And as she said, we are collaborated on this Cameras Communities project. You just saw all the features. It's like when the information is fragmented, our idea is actually Professor Dominique's idea is to together everything to be in one place. Similarly, when you look at as a trainer, I mean, for example, as part of a global network learning, if you're collaborating and you're part of this Cameras community, you can come to this community, you can register and you can collaborate with the others. Like you see that you can add your members, you can talk, you can exchange notes, you can pull. At the same time, if you click on your my trainings, and because I already have some courses here, you know, the beauty of this platform is they've used all open source technologies, and where you all know popular learning management system is Moodle. So Cameras communities utilized that functionality, and we are here, like you can see here now, York is collaborating with Goa University on a linguistics course. So people together, I mean, students from Goa University and York, and they're exchanging inside this course. This is like any other your Moodle LMS environment inside Cameras communities environment, you know. See here, the two teachers from York and then from Goa, they together, they discussed in the community area, they formed their hubs. Like you can see your groups, you can form a community there, you can exchange notes, you can come, and then you can generate a course like any other Moodle environment. At the same time, as Professor Dominic just mentioned about LMS and LLM together, pretty soon we're trying to come up with the AI integrated Moodle. Also, the feature is already available, but then, you know, these are all, the technology is resource oriented. So we have to gather that those resources, I mean here, not the open educational resources, the resources is the technology behind it. Then we can have more power to this platform. As she said, it's a plurilingual platform. Right now, because we are working with French educators, the platform is in French, but then we can always change the language. Quickly, I will conclude this demonstration because it's hardly 5 more minutes for Q&A. Thank you, Professor Dominic. So thank you so much, Professor Dominic. That was a very insightful session on how we have to come together with the fragmented resources in one place to exchange and to curate. As you rightly pointed out, artificial intelligence can help us to reduce the laborious process, but it's always a critical thinking that matters, where teacher in loop really matters. And then that's how this platform has come into the picture. And thank you so much for a very insightful session. And I think now I'll open the floor for the questions. Anybody? Yes, Salmanji, you can unmute. And Professor Rabindranath Salman from Ambedkar Open University, our Director, EMRC. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Dominic, for that well laid out and elaborate presentation. My name is Professor Solomon. I'm from Ambedkar Open University. Professor Dominic, we in our university, we already operate a structured repository model to manage our academic resources. However, as an open university serving diverse learners at scale, we are now thinking beyond storage towards ensuring continuous updating, contextual tagging, usability, and long-term sustainability of our digital assets. Now, Professor Dominic, my question to you is, how can institutions that already have repository systems evolve them into dynamic, lifecycle-oriented models that support ongoing curation, reuse, and meaningful engagement, rather than functioning primarily as storage archives? To be more specific, Professor Dominic, how do we shift the faculty mindset from uploading content to thinking in terms of digital stewardship across the full information lifecycle?
So this is a very important question, and maybe I went fast, but we asked ourselves the same question at the beginning regarding, we had the repositories, and we could see that, yes, you upload information or knowledge, but sometimes it is not being reused and it's not being updated. And this is where it is very important. Your question is, and the key word, and there is a trend around that, is a community of practice. So you need to create a community of practice within your institution, and it could be across discipline or it could be discipline-based. And then you develop that environment, because what is important is the exchange. You learn because of exchange. You don't learn because you upload or download documents. We know that humankind evolved because of conversation, and it's in the conversation that your perspective is being changed. It's when you interact with other people. That's why we created that platform, the community, after having created the repository, because the repository, we saw what you're noticing, people uploading and downloading, but they are not upgrading their skills and their competencies.
Yes.
And this is where the community of practice is key. And I learned that as well, for example, from another university. So this is where the global collaboration is key, because that concept, I learned it by working with the other institution in the course that I am doing with GOA, who is in Marseille in France. And in Marseille, they reflected about that community of practice as well. And they thought about, in the context of our training educators and upskilling educators at the pre-university level, the key was to have two flow. One would be that in faculty of education, the future educators are trained, and then we follow them, that community of practice. They developed an ecosystem where they follow the future educators when they are being hired, and they can see where were the gaps in their training. Because we are so fragmented between pre and post, that the future educators were being hired, and when they arrived in the field, they were lacking certain part of knowledge, and there was like a lot of mental illness and a lot of people leaving the profession. So we needed to address that. So you had the Faculty of Education following the future educators in the field for 3 years, trying to get information on the knowledge they needed. But it was the conversation between the two groups, the Faculty of Education and the field, the people in the field. And then they did the opposite. They had the flow coming up. They had in-site educators telling the university what they needed to do to train future students. It was that conversation across. So you needed that community of practice. So I was inspired by this, and I copied the model and I developed that platform. So it's to show you that global conversations are key, because someone at some point develops something that you can reuse and implement locally. So
Yeah,
I think
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Dominic, for that very pointed and specific answer. Thank you. We'll take note of this. Thank you so much.
it's community of practice is the key.
Yeah. I get it, ma'am. I get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Professor Pallavi, ma'am, yes, please go.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Dominic, for the enriching evening. I would like to know that for the institutions with the limited technical infrastructure, what is the most practical first step towards the approach as discussed today?
To build an ecosystem like this?
Yes, because most of the institutions, many a times, they do not have the appropriate infrastructure, digital infrastructure.
So that's a very good question. That ecosystem was developed outside the university. It was developed by actually a community of practice, like people who already have developed the platform for another group. And it was a private sector, which is interesting. They had developed that ecosystem for the private sector, but because they believe in the public sector, they actually give the ecosystem, because it is a system which is open access and you can actually develop it. So I think that this is important, is to look as well at groups who are developing ecosystem for upskilling in a profession. Could be engineering, it could be health, it could be, and everybody is actually working on this. I actually got that idea as well from the private sector, the telecom private sector in France, they have developed an ecosystem like that to train their employees on how to upskill when you work in the telecom business. So it's to be always looking at where is a very interesting ecosystem. Then you approach them and you ask, can we work together so that we can actually develop an ecosystem that would meet your needs? So it's a collaboration sometimes between public and public, or private and public.
Thank you, Dr. Dominic. It's just like learning together is growing together. That's what we
Exactly.
came to know. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, Pushpa madam.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from Professor Dominic in one word. As you said in the first slide itself, the challenge today, what we are facing, that is the risk management. As you said, the information is abundant and the knowledge is fragmented, and many platforms are coming up, and also the learners' diversity is very high. Particularly if we take our university, the learners are very much diverse in nature, as well as the large scalability is very large. If in that case, what is a sustainable mechanism do you advise or you suggest?
So maybe what I'll do is that I'll give the example of York. We have created at the university level steering committee that whose mandate is database management, like open database management for the science. Then there would be a committee for open education and open pedagogy. And we are trying to embed this in the process for TNP, tenure and promotion. We want to push educators to actually collaborate, develop resources, and share and reflect, because what is more important, as I said, is no longer to create a resource, but really to reflect, assess a resource, and make it relevant to your use or to your learners, like the divergent learners that we have. And with all of those tools being developed, that are going to help develop for educators to develop different pathways, learning pathways for different students, so that they can progress at their rhythm. You need to have steering committee at the top, where you have champion in open education and in a learning system that can help the university transform itself, because universities are very slow, and it takes a lot of time to transform practice. So you need to have those steering committee that push, and those steering committee collaborate with other steering committees in other universities. So you recreate that exchange and sharing at those more formal type of groups where you discuss. So we had that at York. We were talking with BC, British Columbia University, and Victoria University, and then you create that at the national level or the local level, so that you have those champion and expert in open education and in digital technology and AI, starting to figure out how do you make that sustainable and engage your educators. And your educators are not going to engage at the same level. You always have the early adopters. You always have your champions.
We can't hear you. Is that only me?
No.
Oh, we can't
No.
hear, ma'am.
Yeah, we can't hear. Sushmna, maybe
Yeah. Professor
due to
Dominic?
I am here, yeah. So
Oh,
you,
yeah.
you give them grant. We develop, for example, in New York, the Academic Innovation Fund. People compete and they receive a small grant, but they seed after. They seed within their faculties and within their departments. So you need to build that grassroots by first having your champion, having formal groups that discuss the transformation of education, and then you have your champion who are going to actually transform at the local level, the departmental level, or the faculty level.
Yeah.
It takes
Thank you.
time. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor Dominic, for joining us, as well as for insightful and very informative webinar today. And really, I must thank you very much. Sushmna ji, yeah, there is one more from
Yeah,
I
Mary
think there is
Sunanda.
Mary. There is Mary.
Yeah, I read more question in the chat. Actually, she says, "How? Good evening, all. Good evening, ma'am. How can we one upskill with the help of OERs?" This is Professor G. Mary Sunanda from Education Department.
So how can one upskill? As I said, the upskilling is conducted through exchange, collaboration, and tools, special tools. So OER, we have lots of OER. What is important is the exchange, the sharing of OER, and the discussion about the OER so that they can be assessed and transformed locally to be relevant. So the upskilling is through the information, but is really the upskilling is done, as we saw, through tools. So you have those kind of systematic information management system, that bring information or scientific articles into an ecosystem. And as I said, the ecosystem is a community of practice. The systematic information management used to be done, for some people who are really techno-oriented, used to be done with RSS. If you remember, like you had RSS, and you would choose different kind of how would I say, blog or journals, and then RSS would bring it to you. Now there is a different system. There are different tools that do that for you. This is what we are using that I showed you. We have tools that actually take the information, bring it into the space where you have created that possibility to share and exchange. So the upskilling is done through conversation. The upskilling is done through sharing. The upskilling is done through those new tools that bring the information and allow you to curate it. And the tools after, like Sushumna said, which could be an LMS like Moodle or something else, where you bring the resource and you create your micro-credential or your course by yourself, or you co-create it, which is even more interesting because you have different ways of understanding what learning is all about. So the upskilling is really linked to tools that are digital tools, but you need to curate those tools. You need to know exactly why you want. So I showed you in our ecosystem, we just wanted the information, like the systematic monitoring, because we think that educators don't have the time to read those scientific articles in their profession, but they want, so we give AI so that they can quickly decide, I want to read this one or I need this one. And then there is the, and they can bookmark, they create their collection. And then when they have the time, they can read and upskill. But then what is far more interesting is the conversation around the information.
Great, Professor Dominic. And I think this is really leading to entirely to one phrase, that is community of practice. And I believe that I want to connect this to Pallavi ma'am's question also, that even if there is a low infrastructure, and coming to Professor Dominic's quote on, like, we have a lot of information, but with the usage of tools, sometimes we may end up and landed at low cognitive skills. And while upskilling also, definitely we can utilize the technology, and not just inbuilt in the university for upskilling. As Professor Dominic said, you yourself can build the information for your learners, which will be upskilling for yourself. At the same time, synthesizing, just the tools are for synthesizing, but your element, your thought process is yours, unique to you, which are designed to address, to focus to your learners what you want to disseminate. So it's all about the combination of your thoughts and exchanging in a forum, the discussions, and your involvement at the end of the day, what makes you really enhance your skills. Thank you so much, Professor Dominic. And just one more question, maybe. Oh, yeah, you already answered in the chat. Thank you so much. And I think Dr. Kishore is asking about artificial intelligence. Yes, as rightly pointed out by Professor Dominic, it is about manage information and transform information. Anything else, Professor, you want to add to it?
As I said, I will share with Shushumna, she can share with you and with Dr. Kishore the tools we are using that are a mix of AI and other digital tools that allow us to transform information into knowledge, and then how we manage that knowledge. They're all open source. It's all like open education, open source, so everything is shareable, and everything can be reused and transformed.
Thank you so much. And any more questions, or shall we conclude this session? Any more questions? One more time, and then thank you so much. I think my professor whom I worked with in Emeritus Project, Dr. Ramarao sir, is also here. Thank you, sir, for joining, and my dear friends and colleagues from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, and also there are a few friends from the other part of the world. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed about openness and open strategies for making it together, how a community of practice can evolve, can help us to not only upskill us as academicians, but also in turn serving the entire community there, that is our learners, especially with a diverse backgrounds. The tools are merely, actually, I strongly believe in it. We have to, a human in the loop, they call it in the latest jargon, a teacher in the loop definitely helps to maintain the information in a systematic way. On this note, I think Open Education Week is started for all of us across the globe, and from COEL, that is Center for Online Education and Learning, from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University, and also Camrys Communities from York, we kick-started this wonderful week, and we hope we will continue with a lot of information sharing and learning together. Thank you all. Have a good evening and have a good day from other parts of the world. And if possible, if you all can switch on your cameras, if it's okay, we can take a picture and then we'll conclude it. Oh, that's wonderful to see all of you.
Thank you. And just for information, we are developing new global courses with India next year, sorry. So there'll be more groups where our students exchange and learn together.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
through exchange and collaborative also we can travel together, Professor Dominic.
Yes, we will.
Thank you so much.
Wow, nice to see. I think Professor Dominic, most of them are also like, if you remember, for Open Education for Better World, the entire team is here. Professor Pushpa ma'am and Dr. Kishore, Dr. Kumar, Professor Rapindra sir. Yes, thank you so much. This is really a wonderful picture, I believe. One more time, and because there are two screens that I have to take a screenshot. Okay, thank you all. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you,
Thank
Sushila,
you.
for beautiful collaboration. Coordinating.
Thank you.
Coordinating.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
See you all.
Have
Thank
a
you.
good evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have a good day, Dominique. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. You too, Professor Dominic.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.